1815 was a tough year in Europe. Some good stuff happened. Switzerland opened the first commercial cheese factory, that first stone paving the way to Lunchables and stadium nachos and little baseball helmets. Georgetown College became Georgetown University. Elizabeth Cady Stanton and St. John Bosco were born. Pretty cool folks. But the year had some real downer moments, too. Mount Tambora erupted in Indonesia, killing almost 100,000 people and shoving so much stuff into the atmosphere that it screwed up the weather around the world for a couple years. The Napoleonic Wars reignited. The Neapolitan War broke out for a few months in the middle there. Both of those wreaked havoc on Austria. So the rural area of Salzburg, near the Alps, was no stranger to some of the problems in 1815. And it's way out there in the wake of all this that this young assistant priest named Joseph Moore writes a poem in 1816. With spirits and bodies ravaged by wars, a year's worth of crops now failing because of the crazy weather forcing the cost of food and grain to skyrocket. Sound familiar? He writes a poem that in English we now call Silent Night. And a couple years later, in 1818, he takes that poem to a local teacher and organ player named Franz Gruber. He asks Gruber to write a melody for the poem so they can sing it at Christmas Eve Mass in a small church that looked a bit like the one we're building here. A little bit bigger, but only slightly less drafty. Because even though Gruber's an organist, Father Moore has to ask him to write the melody for something simpler. The church's organ is also no stranger to the problems of the time. By some accounts, the recurrent flooding had done a number on the organ, and by others, rats and mice had infested the thing, making it unplayable. In any event, it wasn't working by Christmas Eve. So a song that we've come to associate with the great big old sounds of organs and orchestras or choirs is originally just two voices and a guitar, which is fitting, because the original lines that Father Moore wrote in German are a little different than the ones we now sing in English. That Christmas Eve, the song starts like the poem, with a simple, almost surreal scene. It's a silent night, because everything in the world is asleep, except for a young mother and father looking at their curly-headed newborn baby. But the lines build, revealing that this quiet family moment with the rest of the world asleep is really a big moment, the hour of salvation for all of humanity, God making good on his promise for peace on earth, from silent night to sounding forth loudly far and near. It's a big change. But the people of rural Salzburg in 1818 needed a big change. They needed to be reminded that quiet, humble beginnings can lead to great things. They needed to know that just because you start with years of war doesn't mean you can't eventually get to the promise of peace. What starts as a bunch of scattered pieces can stand upright together. Even if it seems like all you have are a bunch of conflicting perspectives, you can still find some clarity and unity down the road. And if one night can go from silence to a baby's laugh, to an angel triumphantly singing that humanity's moment of salvation is here, then all that other stuff can happen too.